Now on Racing Pulse, RSN's racing editor, Matt Stewart.
We envisage this may have occurred a few weeks ago. I'm not saying better late than never, but certainly the right message, the right ad, and as we race towards 80% vaccinations.
For more news, opinion and selections, head to rsn.net.au.
Gee whiz, there's been plenty of news in the last 24 hours as far as the Spring Carnival is concerned. The jockey merry-go has well and truly begun. And we got a little insight, I think, Matty, when we spoke to Annabelle Neesham yesterday, that there may have been some movement in the wind, and it certainly played out that way with Craig Williams now on Animo for the Cox Plate, and we are waiting to see if Zaki, which all indications are, will be reunited with James McDonald. We'll have a chat to Martin Bacall, the racing minister, who can give us more insight. We put a little poll up. Craig Williams will ride Animo in the Cox Plate. Who would you rather be on? Who did you say you'd rather be on, Matty?
Gee, that's a 50-50. I would genuinely say I could toss a coin for Zaki and Incentivise. I think Annabelle will get him back on track, Zaki, and Animo's, a 3-year-old who has to rise again. So, yeah, and I think the poll kind of illustrates that, doesn't it?
I think it was 51% Animo, 49% Zaki with over 800 votes. So it is split right down the middle. But, gee, that was some pretty confident quotes from speaking to Vin Cox earlier about how good James Cummings thinks Animo is. One of the best that he's had, and could be a horse that could elevate him to another level in his training career. Yeah,
absolutely. I was actually having just a text chat with Michelle Payne last night about something completely unrelated, and her comment about Animo was he's just a superstar. So interesting. It's going to be really interesting. And of course, James, it sounds like he's good to go, and it'll be interesting when you hear from when you talk to Martin Bacall later on about the last tick for James McDonald is going to have to come from health officials. The bubble situation, the travel from one zone to the other, from state to state, looks like it's achievable for him to come and ride Zaki in the Cox Plate, but you never quite know with the health officials being the final decision makers when it comes from movement between states. So the situation, which will probably be quickly resolved with James McDonald, is now that Zaki right now actually physically doesn't have a rider.
No. Well, hopefully in 10 minutes' time we'll get more indication. But I think the camp's pretty confident that it's going to fall their way, which is the reason why those cards have been dealt with Williams going on to Animo. Hey, before we get to the Cox Plate, though, we've got obviously 1,000 Guineas Day and we've got Caulfield Cup Day, and Peter Moody kindly sent us the final piece of work of Incentivise this morning. Interestingly, working pretty well with Nickajack Cave, who was unable to run on the weekend.
Yeah, they both had a bit of a spin around at Pakenham this morning. Blake McDougall was aboard Nickajack Cave, and Luke Nolan was on Incentivise. And Moods had a bit of a joke with Luke Nolan. I bet you'd like to be on this on Saturday. And Luke said something inaudible. But obviously the issue with Nickajack Cave is the vets keep ruling his action is problematic. That it lends itself to them thinking that he's carrying some sort of an issue. Moods wants to run him in Sydney in the next week or so, but it's all dependent on whether he can get a veterinary clearance, whether it's here or there, or what it is. But so he's in some sort of a potential holding pattern, and you could tell the frustration in Moods' voice with a little stable audio grab that we were privy to, and all seems well with Incentivise. He had a brief chat with Luke Nolan, and it was a all good. So, yeah, all systems go there. And had a chat to Jason Kerr about the likely weather. They are going to tip a little bit more moisture on the track than they would have, or they did last Saturday. A concession from the MRC that they had probably erred slightly the wrong way with the preparation of the track for the Caulfield Cup. Jason Kerr said, we haven't had a push along from Racing Victoria or anything, but we've decided that maybe it was a tad too firm for some. We're going to put a little bit more moisture on it for tomorrow's meeting, and he said it'll be a good fall right throughout the program. Then he said we're going to get between 25 and 40 mils between now and until or throughout Saturday. It's hard to say how it'll play out, which is a lot of rain. And he said in his guesstimation, the track on Saturday will be somewhere between a 5 and a 7. Worst case scenario, heaps of rain, a 7, not as much, just on the worst side of a good 4. So they're the likely scenarios with the track for Saturday and for tomorrow.
And of course, we've got the last chance to win in tomorrow in the Coonji Cup. Floating Artist is an odds-on favourite, and those who are on the precipice, Entonte is currently 17, Harpo Mark's 18. So if Floating Artist wins, it'll bump them back, and then you've got Quick Thinker, who is the other one, below them as well. Now, Entonte is entered for a race in Sydney, so the final make-up of the Caulfield Cup field will be after tomorrow's Coonji, but you would imagine there's a few nervous connections on the borderline as we speak.
Yeah, I think Quick Thinker's the Derby winner. I think he's up the list a bit, and the issue with him is whether... I haven't been able to get hold of Jamie Steer today to work out if that preemptive vet certificate that they were hoping to seek in case the weather doesn't come and the track's too firm for him and they have to have paid the $37,500, whether that's retrievable. But that would be an unprecedented bid from OTI to establish that. So not sure about where that's at the moment. The Everest is a race that's sort of been a little bit out of sight, out of mind for us because it's all focused on incentivise and so on. But it's going to be a fascinating race on Saturday. And I think the most fascinating horse other than Incentivise that we've seen all spring is the return of Classique Legend, who won the race last year. We've only seen him once in public since. He ran last in Hong Kong. He came back after an arduous trip via New Zealand. He missed the shorts because of the arduousness of quarantine and getting back. He's had 3 trials. The last one was impressive and as good as he went last year, according to Karen McAvoy. And I had a good chat to Les Bridge this morning just about the challenge, his faith in Classique Legend, and whether he thinks the market's got it right with a horse that hasn't raced in Australia since this day last year, whether he thinks the market's got it right with Classique Legend.
Actually, his last trial, his first one was ordinary. Second one was better. But McAvoy said he felt like the other day when he trialled his last trial, McAvoy said he felt as good as he did last year. So that's all I can go on. Last year I thought he was a certainty. This year I think he can win, but he's got to do it first up. So, yeah, that's the doubt. I think he's a great horse, mate. I wouldn't try it with any other horse. That's all I can tell you. It'll be one of the great comebacks if he wins it from the horse himself to come from where he was. He had one run in Hong Kong and run last, and now he's 4-1 favourite in the Everest. It is bizarre, I've got to even admit myself. I'm surprised, mate. I don't know. I'm just surprised. I thought that'd all be... A lot of them here, you get experts in this game, they're all saying he can't win first up and all that. So, yeah, I am surprised he's favourite.
If he could pull this off, Classique Legend, he has to be regarded as the best sprinter since Black Caviar by a considerable margin, I reckon. The nature of what he's trying to achieve, the hassles with COVID and coming via New Zealand and different temperatures and so on. And do you agree? I think if he wins this, he's the only one that we can say is Black Caviar, Classique Legend, and then a gap to maybe Chautauqua, Nature Strip and the rest. This is going to be a champion. He has to be a dead set champion to pull this off on Saturday.
Yeah, it'd be huge. And what about his trainer, Les Bridge? If he can pull it off, a Melbourne Cup winning trainer, he's already a Hall of Famer. If he could do this first up into an Everest, he's got the right style of horse, and the way the race plays out, he sounded confident too, didn't he? So it's going to be fascinating. And the barrier draw a little later this morning as well will tell us more. Gee, I'll tell you
just on the barrier draw. On the barrier draw, I did ask him about that as well. He said he doesn't want the extremes. He said anywhere between 6 and 10, he said he'd be really happy with. He doesn't care what the track condition is, whether it's wet, dry or otherwise. He says he's just as good on anything. So I'm going to be cheering for him on Saturday. I mean, he's a champion, this horse. It's just an amazing quest that he's on. So fingers crossed.
Gee, left field decision, Embracer, getting the final slot for James Kennedy.
Yeah, well, he's going to go around 100 to 1, and I don't know what other options there were out there, but certainly Embracer, who's come off a placing to Masked Crusader, but well held at 20 to 1 last start in the Premier Stakes. So someone's got to fork up $600,000 for the outsider in the race, and it happens to be James Kennedy this year.
Yeah, absolutely. And Matty, there's still more turns and twists in this whole Oakbank saga as well.
Big development coming. They're not lying down at all. There's some very big heavy hitters involved in this last bid to change this all around. I know that Francis Nelson is certainly involved, and there are others, including some big heavy hitters from this side of the border. They're organising a special meeting. The members are going to organise a special meeting. Their aiming is to overthrow the board and the committee and the club at Oakbank, Onkaparinga Racing Club, instill a new powerful board, drag Racing SA back to the table, point out some of the things that Racing SA promised and didn't deliver, including jumps, trials, shoots and all these sorts of things that they basically set them up to fail, and a last-ditch effort to take ownership basically of that precinct. Ownership in inverted commas. It's still going to be under the jurisdiction of Racing SA, but in a bid to resurrect the famous and historic Oakbank races and the jumps races at the club, because the sentiment has been a lot of discussions with the local community as well and the local businesses and accommodation that this will have a devastating effect on the local economy around the area, and that Racing SA did not factor in the disruption it would cause to local businesses and the economy. So it's not over yet, and this is going to get very interesting now, because it's going to be a revolution as such at the club, and then a very, very frank ultimatum with Racing SA.
It's getting very messy. And just as we finish, did you realise the Horse of the Year was on last night?
You know what? Can I be honest? I didn't until you told me about an hour ago. So there's something wrong here when we don't know these things are on, whether it's us or them. But
no,
Horse of the
it's
Year,
ludicrous.
Horse of the Year, there used to be a massive thing. Where was it? I have no idea.
Who honestly cares about the Horse of the Year when it is in the middle of Caulfield Cup Everest Week? No one gives a stuff about it. And it is so poor for the horse itself, very elegant, by the way, who was named Horse of the Year, and the connections, because they don't receive the spotlight, they don't receive the attention, they don't receive the kudos, because no one gives us stuff. All we care about now is what's happening now, and that is one of the best weeks of racing, the current horses. So it's a moment lost. It is ludicrous where this placement is of the Horse of the Year, and I know COVID played a part of it. I said the same thing about the Victorian Horse of the Year, but this is even worse. It needs to be rectified, and it needs to be changed.
Well, the next champion is about to be established, whether it's incentivised or whoever wins the Cox Plate. You can't have the previous champion going around and getting rolled by the next champion the week or so of the... Yes, Horse of the Year, it's... kind of ridiculous. I don't even know whose jurisdiction it is. Is it racing? Is it that body called Racing Australia or
Racing Australia? For those who are interested, Stay Inside champion 2-year-old Ole Kirk, 3-year-old Sprinter Nature Strip, champion 3-year-old filly Hungry Heart, champion jumper, gold medals. They were the major winners as well. Hey, Matty, we've got to go. We've got the Racing Minister Martin Pakula on the other side. We can read all about it. rsn.net.au.
Absolutely.